Hello, good morning. Today is Monday. I had an interesting weekend. Hung out with friends that I hadn't seen for a while and went to a concert. There was a DJ named Hayden James who came and had a really fun performance. It's fun to just listen to some electronic dance music. That's his genre. And then my wife and I went to a concert, a choir in Seattle, to support one of her friends who is transgendered. And it's a choir for transgendered people. I think it's called Seattle Transgendered and Non-Binary Choir Ensemble. Stance is the name of the group. And that was really cool. It's really cool to listen to music and see their community support each other. And their community's been through a lot. I don't think I could ever really understand, what they're going through. But just as one human being to another human being, I support them. So yeah, it was a full weekend. And yesterday, after all the other stuff from Friday and Saturday, I was gonna make some videos, but I just was like, you know what? I'm gonna just take it easy. So I literally just played the piano and guitar all day. It was awesome. It was a ton of fun. But now it's Monday, and I feel like I want to make some videos. So a video that I wanted to make is, which is this one, is to talk about a really cool YouTube channel and Substack that I think is invaluable because there is the topic of accepting collapse or understanding collapse and then accepting it and then what to do afterwards. That's a very difficult, very, very, very difficult subject because we rely on the civilization that we live in for our survival. And then to look at it critically is very challenging because it threatens our sense of safety, our sense of our own survival, ability to live. It can unmoor your basic pillars of understanding how life works, and that can be frightening. It can be depressing. It could be liberating too. There's a lot of good things that could happen. It could be liberating and it can also resolve a lot of cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you're holding two beliefs or ideas in your mind that are mutually exclusive. Let's see, what's an example? Cognitive dissonance would be like, my friend really loves me, and also you believe my friend actually wants to kill me. That would be very distressful to believe both of the things at the same time. But living in this society, this civilization that we live in, that almost everybody is part of, except for maybe the people on North Sentinel Island, and maybe some tribes in the Amazon. But even the tribes in the Amazon are getting killed and displaced. So I think the only people that may not be actually part of this civilization are maybe the North Sentinelese. They might be the only people that are not part of our civilization now. Being part of the civilization is, in order to be part of it, you have to believe certain things, and that causes a very big cognitive dissonance, which I think everybody feels, but very few want to acknowledge or even look at. And that can be very distressful, even if you don't even think about it. If you suppress it, I think it can affect our mental health, our physical health, and our spiritual health. And I think most people go through life suppressing it. And that's not very healthy. In fact, our microbiome, there's actually research papers that show if you suppress emotions, well, I don't know the difference between repressing and suppressing. Let's look it up. What's the difference between suppress and repress? Okay, AI overlord, tell me, what is the answer? So AI overlord says the main difference between repression and suppression is unconscious, while suppression is conscious. Oh, I learned something new today. Thank you, AI overlord. It's really amazing, AI. I made this. I should make that bigger so you can read it too. Main difference between repression and suppression is that repression is unconscious, while suppression is conscious. Well, I would argue that most people repress this cognitive dissonance. And the cognitive dissonance is that we need, like, our survival, the way that we have set up our life, requires civilization to continue to function. It requires fossil fuels to be dug up or pumped out of the ground so that we have energy to stay warm, to have water flowing to our taps, to have food grown with fertilizer made from fossil fuels, and harvested and shipped to supply centers and then grocery stores. And then we use fossil fuels to, even if you have an electric vehicle, you're using some fossil fuels in that electricity to go get the food, and you come home and then you eat it, and you may use electricity or natural gas to cook your food if you cook them. So we need the civilization to function in order to survive based off of our current way of life. So that's one thing that you have to hold in your mind. But then the other thing that you have to hold in your mind, well, the people don't want to, but it's there, is that this way of life has some serious problems. And well, the main thing is our food systems, our way of growing food. It deforests the planet, and wildlife biomass is like 1%, whereas like 99% or something is humans plus livestock, and like chickens and fowl. Yeah. And our release of CO2 into the atmosphere is causing the temperatures to rise, and all of this together, the deforestation, the loss of wildlife, the loss of biodiversity, the pollution from plastics and other chemicals like forever chemicals, and then the rapid rise in greenhouse gases leading to a rapid rise in atmospheric temperatures that were faster than any other time that there's been mass extinctions, because there's been 5 other mass extinctions, and during those times CO2 rose very quickly, but we are breaking those records. We're making it rise even faster than the previous 5 mass extinctions. So we are causing a 6th mass extinction, which means that even though we are relying on this way of life to survive, the outcome of this way of life is for the vast majority of life on this planet to end. Yeah, that is, how about that for cognitive dissonance? But most people don't want to think about the second part. But I think deep down most people understand that, or feel it at least, that something's happening. It's not quite right. It's definitely not quite right. So that's cognitive dissonance in relation to collapse and civilization. And I've made several videos about this. But I found that there's another YouTuber who has been making videos and wrote essays online in Substack, and I wanted to share their Substack and videos with you, so that you can, if you're interested, you can learn about it, because I think that she does a very good job of explaining this very complicated, very hard to understand topic. And her name is Andrea P. So let's show you her so let's see. Let's go to her Substack. Andrea P. It's the what is it? Post-Doom Primer. Post-Doom Primer. So even the name, I think, is really cool. Yeah, Post-Doom Primer. Let's see if we can make this a little bigger. So this is, so she says here, this primer is not meant to be delightful. It's meant to be truthful. Please mind your mental health. Oh, that's very important. Because because when you start studying collapse, it can be terrifying, because you're actually looking at what you probably already feel, but you actually look at it, and it can be shocking and terrifying, and it can make you depressed. So you got to be mindful about your mental health. And if you find that you're getting depressed or something, give it a rest. There is an excellent Reddit called Collapse Support. So we're gonna go there real quick. Reddit Collapse Support. I can spell. Yeah, here we go. r/collapse support. This is a place for finding help and just finding a community of people that are also dealing with the realization of what's happening, and to support one another. This is a great support. Highly recommend this. And of course, if you're feeling like hurting yourself, there's a 988 hotline that in the United States that you can call to talk with somebody that can help. But this is a very good support in relation to this topic, and also seeking therapy, if that's an option, is really good. That's partly why I'm going to therapy, at least for right now. And I find it actually very, very helpful, extremely helpful. All right, so going back to the Post-Doom Primer. So what she's got here is, and I'll put this in the video description, the website and the YouTube. So it's written really well. I haven't read all of it, but I've read more of the later ones, because they're talking about like what do you do once you've accepted it, and how do you think about it? And so I was more focused on that because I've spent since like 2015, almost 10 years reading about collapse-related articles and podcasts and YouTube videos and books. So I didn't go through her earlier stuff, but this is what she talks about, like how did we get here, and then green energy. The green energy is it's a little bit of a lie, actually a big lie. There is a book by one of my favorite authors, Derrick Jensen, spelled Derrick. This guy is an amazing writer. I think he lives in Northern California now. Well, I think maybe he used to live up here in Washington, on the eastern side. For a while, but I think he lives in California now. He's written several books. I've read several books by him. I think like four of his books. Amazing writer. He helped me kind of formulate in my mind how the culture tries to propagate itself, and how oppression and abuse and violence is integral to how the civilization is structured, and it's part of it. It's just the way, that's how it is. So, but this book in particular is called Bright Green Lies. It talks about how the lies of electrification, electric vehicles, solar panels, wind farms, that's not going to save us. This is an interesting book. This one's pretty technical. I find this is probably the least favorite book that I've read of his, because it's so technical in the green technologies, and it's written by a couple different authors. Derrick is the main one, and then there's two others. I find that Derrick's writing, Mr. Jensen's writing, is amazing. There's a book called A Language Older Than Words, and then Deep Green Resistance, and then there's The End Game. They're just really fascinating books. But so green energy is not going to save us. So I think that's what Andrea is talking about here. Her title says, Green Energy is Omnicide, as usual. Well, that sounds like she's talking about that. And then 3, so there's 7. 3 is the effects of civilization. 4, where we can go and will go from here. Well, it's not looking good. Reasons for inability, refusal to see civilization for what it is. Now, this is what I was talking about the... I've already forgot which one is repressing and suppressing. I think repressing is unconscious. What's the difference between suppress? Repression is unconscious. Suppression is conscious. Yeah, so there's a... oh man, I'm going to get this confused. Repression is unconscious. There's a lot of repression of these feelings that we all have. I mean, you can feel it. It's just like, something's not quite right. This doesn't quite work, but you repress it. You're like, oh, I'm going to go to university. I'm going to get a really good degree, and I'm going to save the world, and I'm going to contribute to a better life for everybody. Or maybe you're not that altruistic. You're just like, I'm going to go to university, and I'm going to be really smart, and I'm going to invent something. I'm going to be a billionaire. And then, well, I mean, some people, they get there. Um, but, most people don't. And they're like, wait, what is going on? Why am I working so hard? Why am I living this way? Um, but I think even if you're a billionaire, you realize, wow, this is not quite working out right. There's, well, okay, we're gonna go on a little side thing, a side adventure. There's many years ago there there was an interesting report. I can't remember. It was a news story. Well, it was a story. It was a story written by a guy who was invited to meet with these very wealthy people, and he didn't quite know what the meeting was for. But when he got there, they were this group of very wealthy people were concerned about what to do after the event, which quotation marks was like for the end of civilization as we have it right now. And they're asking this guy questions. I forget why they asked this guy. I forget his credentials. But he wrote this story about how strange this experience was. And they were concerned about how to, I'm going to bring the camera in closer. They were concerned about, how to maintain control over their security guards in their doomsday bunker when money doesn't matter anymore, and when there's hordes of people trying to survive out there, but without much food, and rule of law is broken down. Now, how do you maintain control of your security guards? So they're asking this guy. They're asking this guy like how do we maintain loyalty so that we don't end up dying, and the security guards take over our bunker, our doomsday bunker. And so they were like bringing up ideas like, do we need to put like shock collars around the necks of all the security guards so that we can zap them if they're not doing what we want? I mean, this is how some of these wealthy people are thinking. It's actually kind of shocking. Well, not that shocking. I guess that's a pun. Yeah, so even if you go to university and you invent something and then you are a billionaire, I think you still have that feeling that things aren't quite right. In fact, if you're a billionaire, you probably have access to a lot of very intelligent people who will tell you that, yeah, this is happening. And, if you think about it, then you realize, oh yeah, okay, this is happening. So, doomsday bunkers are interesting because they all have vents, air vents. They need air to get in, and so there was a TV show called Rain. I think it was called Rain. Rain. I think some Scandinavian TV show about like some virus that wipes out most of humanity, and two of the main characters are in one of these doomsday bunkers, but they get smoked out by raiders that want the supplies in the bunker. But I would imagine if you're a billionaire and you have a doomsday bunker, you have a way to get around smoke being put into the air vents. But you probably don't have a way to get around cement being poured into the air vents. You need air, you need air. But if you're suffocating, then you have to come out, and then the raiders get all your supplies. But so I don't think a doomsday bunker is a very good idea. I've wanted to talk about that for a while, but I just never found a good way to talk about it. But now I did. So Yeah, so there's a lot of refusal to see. Repressing, unconsciously repressing. Well, and then once you see it, then it's hard to unsee, and then you can suppress. That's conscious. I learned something today. Journalism as pro-civilization propaganda. Yeah, this is like who would hog a bull like a heavy machinery digger? That's preposterous, laughable. Except I'm not laughing. 6. Civil zealotry. Yeah, well, okay, so talking about hope. So when you read these like articles about climate change and mass extinction and loss of all these news articles, they always end by saying, but there's time. There's time. We can, if we do X, Y, and Z, we can avoid this terrible outcome. But every year things get worse, and the articles stay the same at the end. They say, there's not much time left, but if we do X, Y, and Z, we can avoid it. Well, I think they'll still be saying that when there's no more fish in the supermarket because our industrial fishing fished all the fish out of the ocean, and most of the forests have burned down because the weather patterns change and it's really hot, and when the CO2 levels are so high that it's causing cognitive dysfunction, because CO2 levels are 420 some parts per million, but once it gets to 1,000, you can't really even think very well. And 1,000 is like if you're sitting in a car or like a stuffy office building without any circulation, and you got a bunch of people in there. You got a lot of people breathing in the oxygen, exhaling CO2, but the CO2 can't get out, and then you just start getting a headache and you just feel sluggish, and you got to go out for a breath of fresh air. That phrase, breath of fresh air. Well, that's because the CO2 level is too high in that enclosed compartment. Well, it gets to the point where at some point the atmosphere is going to have the CO2 level of a stuffy room, and you can't go outside and get a breath of fresh air because the air outside is 1,000 parts per million of CO2. So yeah, I think even then the articles will say, well, we have CO2. Well, this is assuming that there's still articles in news agencies, which I don't think there would be at 1,000 parts per million CO2. But let's just say there was some small village with a printing press. Like we've reverted to like, I don't know, 1800s or something, or I don't know when printing presses were invented. We can look it up. When was the printing press invented? Wow, 1440. Oh man. Okay, we reverted to 1440s, 1400s technology, and we have a printing press, and there's an apocalyptic village that has somehow managed to fend off the scavengers and warring raiders and cannibal raiders, because somehow they stockpiled ammunition or something, and they're feeding themselves through permaculture or something, and they've got a bunch of solar panels that are still functioning, just barely. But, maybe some of the solar panels have already crapped out on their lifespan, but they're still getting by. Or maybe they live next to like a big river, and they're able to generate electricity through that, and they still have managed to fend off all the raiders and cannibals and stuff. And they have a printing press, and they have the village journal. And I think even then they'll say, well, we don't know what the CO2 parts per million is, but it's probably around 1,000. But if we do X, Y, and Z, there's still time. We might be able to avoid the worst of it. I think even then. So, yeah, delusion, hope. Well, hope is different. There's false hope. I remember the story of Vietnam prisoners of war, American soldiers who were prisoners of war in Vietnam. And hope is very interesting because there were soldiers prisoners of war, who were holding out hope that, by Christmas, our people are going to come save us. They're going to rescue us. And then Christmas would come and pass, and they're still in the prison camp, and then they would lose hope and die. But the ones who held hope in a different place, just in the hope that they're going to live, they survived. So it's important where you place your hope. Those news articles are not helping people place hope in the right area, because there is no way of avoiding what's already happening. It's not like it's coming. It's already happening now. So I think talking about post-doom, which is number 7, processing our predicament without getting stuck. This is like the thing that I'm focusing on a lot. And that's why I was so drawn to Andrea's Substack and YouTube videos about this topic, number 7. This photo is really funny. This unicorn rainbow with a reaper. But I highly recommend checking out, especially this number 7 post. It's got 3 parts to it, and if reading is not your thing, like I have mild dyslexia, so reading is just a huge chore for me. I'd much rather hear someone talking about things, and so I find audiobooks and YouTube videos much easier to comprehend. But this is her channel. It's just Andrea P. And I've subscribed. It says here subscribe, but this is just because I'm using Google Chrome so that you don't see all my tabs and everything. It's just a clean browser. But this is the Post-Doom Primer 7, Post-Doom Processing Our Predicament Without Getting Stuck. And, she's got this video explaining what was in her Substack. And there's a very interesting analogy of our civilization like a big spaceship colony floating above the Earth and kind of getting what it needs from the Earth and people living on it. And this metaphor I thought was very interesting about thinking what is possible. Can you redesign civilization? Well, this is a metaphor of a spaceship. Can you redesign the spaceship or civilization to be benign so it can power itself, repair itself, expand itself without taking from the Earth, the host? And that's not possible. Can you turn against the spaceship and completely stop it from enacting further destruction on the host planet? No, because we all live as part of it. Can you keep the spaceship functioning and delivering your survival needs to your pod? Well, this spaceship is going to destroy everything, so that's not possible either. And then this one's really cool too. This is a chart she made, but I need to potty, so I'll be right back. I'm back. I always forget to go pee before I start recording the video, and I usually have a big green smoothie while I'm reading up on stuff that I want to talk about. And then I get all excited. I'm like, I'm ready to make the video. And so I just start clicking record, and then inevitably I have to pee. But I had an excuse to go get some peanuts. Unsalted. Because most of us get too much salt in our diet. Way too much. And I think that that's probably the underlying cause of a lot of health problems, is the chronic overload of sodium in our diet. Whether that's blood pressure issues, heart disease, chronic joint degeneration, autoimmune problems, just trouble healing, inflammation, cancer. I mean, it's probably not just sodium, but I think sodium is a huge part of it. So, highly recommend that as part. Oh, actually, this is going to be part of what Andrea talks about here, is maintaining health, your body's health, and your mind's health. Because if your body's not healthy, your mind struggles a lot. So, I think a big part of once you get to the point where you accept, okay, collapse is happening, no way we can avoid it. What do I do now? Because I'm still alive. Well, I mean, if you want to choose to still be alive, which I do. I woke up today, I'm making a video. I'm eating some peanuts that are unsalted. Keeping your body healthy is, I think, one of the most important parts of this process. And that's not easy in our civilization, because people want to make money from processed foods, and they make processed foods taste really good. Things that make processed foods taste so good: salt, oil, and sugar, and artificial ingredients too. And I think those are destroying people's bodies. They're literally poisoning people's bodies. So it's not easy to stay healthy in today's civilization, but the way you can do that is a low sodium, whole foods, which means unprocessed, plant-based, mostly plant-based diet. It doesn't have to be completely plant-based. Combined with sleeping enough, 7 to 8 hours every night, regularly, exercising, and that means cardio and resistance exercises, stress relief, spending time in nature, spending time with friends, connecting with nature, connecting with friends, having a community, and then connecting with yourself. So really trying to understand how you are the person that you are. Like, what are the things in the past that led to who you are now? What are the things that are in the basement, figurative basement of your soul and mind, that you've locked up these memories or ideas or feelings that are too dangerous to you? Going there and figuring out what that is, and accepting and then forgiving yourself. I think all that is key to having a healthy body, well, and mind. It's actually the whole person. Yeah, that's really important. But let's go back to Andrea's. These are suggestions of how to. Essentially, it's like deep adaptation. What do you do once you accept the predicament we're in? Predicament means there's no solution. Here. Well, the first thing she says, you enjoy relief from cognitive dissonance. That's what I was talking about in the beginning. I might have subconsciously thought of this from watching her video. But that's so true. You enjoy relief of cognitive dissonance. You're liberated from that awful feeling that what I feel doesn't match with what I believe. Once you understand and accept, then what you feel and what you see and believe are in alignment. And let me just tell you that's actually it gives you a lot of peace, and it helps you place hope in something that is a place of true hope. My wife calls it finding hope in the wasteland. I would call it finding hope in the burning forest. So there is hope. There is still life in a burnt forest. In fact, some organisms are adapted to fire. There's a mushroom called a morel mushroom that fruits after a forest fire has come through. And so there was a major forest fire in a place where I made a video where a burnt forest helped me deal with collapse or move beyond collapse. I think that was the video. And that's over here in Lake Chelan, which is the second deepest lake, I think, in the United States. Yeah, I think behind Lake Superior. It's a really pretty lake, but it's on the dry side of the Cascade Mountain range, and so it burns regularly. Well, it burnt like 20 years ago, and I wanted to go see what the forest was like, and there were still a bunch of charred trees, but there were some trees that were still alive, and there were a whole bunch of plants and flowers and bushes and stuff that were growing where the trees were dead. Butterflies, and it was really pretty. Well, this year, somebody was lighting fireworks. It's really stupid. Someone was lighting fireworks and then set the whole region off in fire again. Burnt down the whole trail that I went the whole mountainside where the trail is that I went last year. Well, I'm gonna go in April, whenever it's safe. Well, the snow melts some. I'm gonna go back, and I might find some morel mushrooms because there are organisms that fruit when fire comes through. So yeah, finding hope in a burnt forest or a wasteland. I think that's where you find true hope. So the other stuff she talks about here are seize temporary opportunities, redefine purpose and priorities, become a true optimist. Oh, I guess that's talking about hope. Empathize more. I think we could all use some empathizing to understand what other people are going through. Empathize. That's now there are some people that want to take advantage of people that empathize, so you gotta watch out for that too. Those are people that have the dark triad. Oh, I'm gonna make a video about that, I guess, after this one, when I make lunch. The dark triad sounds really scary, but it's actually a fairly common group of personality traits. You gotta watch out for them. Not to like make a group of people to like be scared of, but there are some people that you just gotta walk away from. All right, the other thing she talks about, relocate and reskill. Yeah, if you're in a big city like I am, yeah, you're probably gonna die first. My wife and I have thought about moving out of where we are. We live in Seattle, greater metro area. You know, when stuff gets worse, the cities are gonna be the first to get worse. I made a video about racism and discrimination, and both on both on your race, but also religious beliefs, political beliefs, whatever. And my wife and I feel safest here in the city, despite knowing that this is where things were going to get worse the first. We have our friends here. We have a community. If I move to the Washington remote rural mountains, I'm going to lose all my friends, the community I have here, and I will be likely discriminated against. So relocating and reskilling is a good idea if you can do it safely. Maintain your health. Get to know your neighbors. That's the community part. Invest in local supply chains. Dabble in primitive strategies. I'm doing that with learning foraging. I would say I'm very minimally successful, especially the mushroom part. Mushrooms are so hard. It's like playing Where's Waldo, except if you don't find Where's Waldo, or if you find the Waldo lookalike who's not Waldo, then you die. Foraging mushrooms is hard. Foraging berries is actually pretty easy. I made videos on that. Explore new ways of thinking. Well, I think that's great no matter how old you are or what stage of life you're in. Support protection of indigenous communities' territories. Well, that's a good idea. I don't know how we would do that, but indigenous communities have been oppressed and murdered and robbed throughout this whole history of civilization, especially in America. Block extraction. I want to do that, but I don't know how to do that. Nurture non-human life, for sure. Promote true eco-awareness. That's what Andrea is doing in her Substack and her YouTube, and what I'm doing. Well, trying to at least. The other part that I thought was very helpful was in one of her. Here. Okay, this is I think really important. This is, what do most people have as their top deathbed regrets? Okay, because right now, civilization is declining. Before we get to these 5 things, because I do want to talk about. We're going to come back to that, because that's a good ending part to think about. There's 2 things that I want to talk about before we end the video. I want to talk about the new energy secretary for the incoming administration of the United States, CEO Chris Wright. So let's learn about Chris Wright. So this guy's going to run our energy. Come on, Wikipedia. Okay. This guy's going to run our energy department of the United States. So I was just curious, who is Christopher Allen Wright? He is chief executive of Liberty Energy, the 2nd largest hydraulic fracturing company. So this is fracking. So fracking is where you pump water into the ground to fracture layers of shale rock so that you can extract oil. Now, the whole reason why people started fracking is because the conventional oil wells were drying up. And so oil production was decreasing. and that was around like 2008 or so, which makes me wonder if the depression, or the what do they call it, the financial crisis was in part due to that. But then they started fracking, and then now we've got oil production through fracking, but now the fracking wells are also starting to dry up. Or not dry up, but the production is decreasing. This concept is called peak oil, which means that because oil is a fossil fuel, there's a finite amount that's under the ground. There's not more that's being made. In fact, fungi are partly responsible for no more fossil fuels being made, because the reason why there's a bunch of oil underground is because there's a bunch of plant matter and some animal and dinosaur matter, but mostly plant matter, that would not decay and then just over time sunk underground through millions of years. And that plant matter was sunlight that was stored in energy. The energy from the sunlight was stored in the plant matter, and it went down underground and then liquefied and became oil. And fungi, so mushrooms are the fruits of the fungi, they started to decompose the plant matter. And you can see the layer in the earth where fossil fuels stop forming. And that's where fungi spores are located. So fungi, mushrooms, started decaying the plant matter. And since then, no more fossil fuels being made. These are many millions of years ago. So yeah, you can. I don't recommend you go out and blame the mushrooms for, having no more fossil fuels, but they're actually part of it. It's really interesting. Fungi, they're curious. They're a curious bunch of life forms. Now I really got off in left field. Oh yeah, okay. So Chris Wright, fracking, peak oil. That's why I was talking about peak mushrooms, peak oil. So this guy, he is the CEO of the second largest fracking company. Interestingly, he's an MIT graduate too. Look at this. He earned his undergraduate at MIT. I wonder how old he is. It doesn't say. Oh man, maybe we went to school at the same time. I don't know. He looks a little bit older than me. So he's an MIT grad. I'm an MIT grad for undergrad. He went to graduate school too, at Berkeley and MIT. This guy, it says right here, believes that there's no climate crisis. At least that's what he says. Now, it's known since the 60s that burning even before that, but definitely in the 60s, fossil fuel company scientists at Exxon published and talked about the fact that burning these fossil fuels will raise the temperature of the atmosphere. And they were concerned. And that was part of some lawsuits. That was in the 1960s. Okay, so this guy is a CEO. He's the boss of a fracking oil company. And so he knows exactly what's happening. And he says, well, he does acknowledge that human emissions of carbon dioxide are contributing to global warming and rising sea levels, but there is no crisis. Okay, so these are some mental gymnastics here. And that negative impacts from climate change are less than the benefits of fossil fuel energy. Okay, well, I guess that depends on how you frame benefits, because the civilization we have needs the fossil fuels in order to continue. So if you're framing it from how do we keep civilization to keep going, at least for a short time frame, then yes, negative impacts from climate change are less than the benefits of the fossil fuel energy in the short term. In the long term, like if you're talking about 7 generations of humans from now, continued use of fossil fuel energy will destroy civilization before the 7th generation. So I guess it all depends on your time frame. So this guy who's going to be our energy secretary is a CEO of second largest fracking company. Doesn't believe there's, at least doesn't say he believes there's a climate crisis, and believes that fossil fuels benefit us more than harm us. So yeah. So it's drill baby drill. Drill baby drill, and put the pedal down to the metal so we fly off the cliff like Wile E. Coyote. You know, why? I don't know if you guys know Wile E. Coyote. Wile E. Coyote, he always chases the roadrunner. So the roadrunner is this little bird here that runs really fast, and the coyote always tries to like catch the roadrunner. The roadrunner goes beep beep, beep beep. But the coyote comes up with all these ingenious plans to try to catch the roadrunner. But many times what happens is the roadrunner tricks the coyote, and the coyote is running really fast to catch the roadrunner, and then goes off the cliff, and goes off so far that like the coyote doesn't realize that he's run off the cliff. He's just running on thin air, and then like a couple seconds later, he's like and he feels underneath his feet for the ground. It's not there, and then he's like uh-oh, and then he falls down. So I think with our new energy secretary, well, we were already going off the cliff. We were already like out here. Now with our new energy secretary, we're gonna be like way out here, and then now do this. Bye. Fall down. What else was I talking about? Oh yeah. Well, before we get to the last part, there was one other thing that I thought was really interesting this morning. It was in YouTube. So, you know, a lot of people don't like politicians for good reason. But you might recognize this politician. This is Canada's president, Justin Trudeau. And you know, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think this is part of what's happening as civilization declines. Yesterday, he published this video about why Canada is changing its immigration system. And so he explained that Canada is going to decrease the number of immigrants into the country, both permanent and temporary, over the next 3 years because of population problems. Now, that's the purported reason. I'm sure that there's a myriad of underlying reasons that are not spoken about in this video. But what I found interesting was that a president of a Western country, which is neighboring mine, in fact, it's very close. I could drive there in 2 hours, is talking about population issues. So overpopulation. Now, I made a video about not having kids, and I talk about overpopulation. A lot of people said there's no overpopulation. In fact, we're depopulating. Now, that's two different things. This is math. So there's the total number of people, and then there's the rate of change. You know, this is, what is that? Algebra? I think that's algebra. There's the slope of the line and the actual like y-axis amount. Okay. We are at the highest population there's ever been of humans. Okay, that's overpopulation. We are in some countries like the United States and a lot of other developed countries. We are at a lower than replacement birth rate. That means that in those countries, the population will decline. But that doesn't mean that we're not at overpopulation right now. It just means that there's going to be less population later. That's different than saying there's no overpopulation. This is a math thing, which, it's basic math. I mean, this is like not calculus or anything. This is, I think it's, well, maybe it's, I don't know. I think it's algebra. Yeah. So this is very basic. Okay. This is overpopulation means that there's too many people for the carrying capacity of the land. If you have birth rates at below replacement, then that population will decline, but they could still be overpopulated until they've declined a lot. That's just basic math. A lot of people, there's so many comments on that video about how we're not overpopulated because we have a declining birth rate, but that's not accurate math. I'm just, I don't like math either. I don't like math either, but this is just how to talk about things so we can communicate together. But this president of Canada is talking about how the population needs to be decreased through decreased immigration. So I find that fascinating. And enforcing borders. So tightening up of borders. So I think as things get worse, movement of people is going to be severely restricted. Some people talk about moving to Canada from the United States if the United States gets too bad. Well, here's the Canadian president saying, not happening. I think it's just going to get worse. So there's a very interesting book, a fiction book, written by Octavia Butler, called The Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. She wrote 2 books in this series that was meant to be a trilogy, but she couldn't write the 3rd one because it made her too depressed. In fact, she lived, I can see the town where, she lived very close to where I live. She's dead now, but she wrote those books in the 90s, the ones I'm talking about, Parable of the Sower, and Parable of the Talents. And in that book, she talks about collapse. So it's actually based in the 2030s or 2020s, so around now, in America. And fossil fuels have run out, and civilization is starting to decline, and people get murdered all the time, and the safety of an enclave that the main character lives in gets disrupted because their enclave, their neighborhood, gets burned down by raiders. And so they have to wander on the highway by foot because there's no more fossil fuels for cars. And you can't even get from California, so it's based in California, you can't even get from California to Oregon because the borders between the states have become impermeable. You get shot if you try to migrate from California to Oregon or Oregon to Washington. So we're not even talking about Canada anymore. We're just talking about between states. And I found it really interesting because in that book she wrote in the 1990s, she talks about a president who comes to power in the United States who is a zealot. And the has controversial policies and but is elected into power, even though people in the country, many people are like, oh, there's no way he's going to get elected because of his more extremist policies. This is the character in the book. But he does get elected, and his to most people's surprise, and this is the kicker. So Octavia Butler wrote this book in the 1990s, and the slogan that this controversial presidential candidate uses is "Make America Great Again." This was written in 1990, and somehow Octavia Butler could predict that. Now, it may be that Trump's campaign utilized that. I don't know if Reagan used that too. So maybe it's not like a huge leap of prescience or something, like foretelling the future. But I still find it pretty remarkable that this lady wrote a fictional story that actually looks pretty close to parts of what we're living today, and maybe parts of what we will live. So I recommend checking out her book, Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. A really cool book. I started reading her second book, which was Parable of the Talents, but then I got too depressed of reading that book, and I had to stop. And apparently she tried to write the third book in the trilogy, and then the author got so depressed that she couldn't finish it. So there is no third book. It's just two. And if she's that good at predicting the future, maybe that's not so good for what portends for us. If she got too depressed, she couldn't write the third book. But, yeah. I just found this very interesting because when I saw this video of Justin Trudeau talking about this, I thought of Octavia Butler. And I was like, wow, this lady is so smart. How the heck did she predict all these things in a fictional book? Amazing. Well, to end this video, these are really important things to realize. When people die, there are usually a set of regrets that are pretty common among people. And in our culture, at least in the United States, we don't talk about death very much. In fact, death is a very much taboo topic. Death is frightening. We want to sweep it under the rug and both repress and suppress it. So both consciously and unconsciously. And subconsciously is repress. And because of that, I think we don't make as good choices when we're alive. Because everyone dies. I think it was Mark Twain, or maybe it's Benjamin Franklin. I can't remember. Some famous guy said that the only two things that all men have in common are death and taxes. I don't remember who said that. Well, everyone dies, but we don't talk about it. Some cultures are better about talking about it, like Mexican culture has Day of the Dead, where they celebrate their ancestors and dying and living. So Americans don't. Nobody wants to talk about death here. And I think that's to a great detriment to the quality of our life. Well, let's read these 5 things that most people regret on their deathbed. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. Well, that is really important. Now, when you say, when it says here, not the life others expected of me, you can insert not the life that my civilization expects of me. There are many different ways to live. And what I'm learning in therapy is that black and white thinking or duality thinking is counterproductive, and that there are many options in between light and darkness. So here's this is a Druid core concept. Light, darkness. There's all the colors and intensities of light in between light and darkness. And life happens in between. Okay, so if you think about civilization eating the earth, destroying our land, the forest, the air, and the water, and all the life forms that are dependent on it, is here. And well, I guess that'd be the darkness. That'd be here. Okay, and then living as a hunter-gatherer in complete harmony with nature. I mean, not even making the megafauna go extinct, which hunter-gatherers did. I mean, even better than what they were doing. Maybe even okay. We will, as an example today, the people that are still alive who are living in balance as best they can are the North Sentinel Island, North Sentinelese. They've been living on that island for 60,000 years, and that island still has forests, and they still are surviving. Okay, so that we'll put them on this end, and then we'll put the us civilization, the people that are fracking the oil out of the ground, and buying vehicles and driving these 2 or 3 ton electric vehicles and gas vehicles all around town, building roads and chopping down forests. Okay, that's us here, and we got the North Sentinelese here. Well, that's duality thinking. Life exists everywhere in between. And so, civilization expects us to be here. But we can be somewhere in between. It's closer to the Sentinelese, I think. But it requires thinking for yourself and myself and each other. So, I encourage you and myself to listen to what's in here in our heart and find a way that's in that rainbow of color in between light and darkness. So having the courage to live a life that's true to ourselves, not the life that civilization expects of us. That's how I word that. 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Now our civilization is set up to work people to their maximum. It's like a very efficient extractor of life energy. Our work system is set up to push you to your limit and stay just under the limit so you don't commit suicide or burn out. Or that if you do quit because it's too much, then you're easily replaceable. Why are we all working so hard? Now, I know that some people have to work 3 jobs to keep a roof over their head, feed their kids, feed themselves. Why are things set up this way? Even when someone makes a lot of money. So I've had many neurosurgical colleagues, because neurosurgeons make good money, that they live where they take their family to Europe, to all these exotic places. They buy the most expensive sports cars. They buy multi-million-dollar homes, and they change their cars regularly, and they live at such a luxurious lifestyle that they have to work ridiculously hard to afford that. So even if someone's making a lot of money, they still put themselves in a situation where they have to work to their limit. So, why are we working so hard? It's a good chance to slow down, if you can. And if you can't, I think speaking out so that we can collectively as a community change the system so that people don't have to work 3 jobs to put a roof over their head and food on the table. Because I think silence is the most powerful way to oppress people. So speaking out, sharing your stories. YouTube's great for that. Other ways, sharing your stories with people so people know what's going on. I think that is a way to change the system. And that's what I'm doing here in these videos. I wish I'd had, this is the third one. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. Oh, I was just literally saying that. Silence is the most powerful way to oppress people. If you make people feel like they are alone and that they're defective for feeling whatever they're feeling, then they're not going to speak out, and then the system doesn't change. But if you're feeling something, it's most likely that everybody else is feeling that who's in a similar situation, but a lot of people are made to feel alone, and if they speak out what they're feeling, that they'll be shunned and excluded, and so they stay silent. But it's actually not the case. If you actually speak out and you express what you're feeling and you share what your life is, then you realize that a lot of people are also feeling the same way and experiencing the same things, and then there's a solidarity, and that potentially maybe a way to change things so that things could be better. That's funny. That's the third one. I was just literally talking about it before we got there. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Community is super important. So Andrea was talking about that in strategies of post. Like once you understand and accept collapse, one of the things was getting to know your neighbors, staying in touch with your friends, building community. And then last one, I wish I had let myself be happier. I guess that goes into all of these things. We only get to live the life that we have here. I mean, it's debatable whether we get reincarnated, whether you have multiple lives, but we for sure have this life that we're all alive. Might not be happy. At the choir concert that I went to, they were talking about hate against the community. And they were talking about how joy is a way to fight hate. To have joy. Joy is slightly different than being happy. But I found that very powerful. To find joy in life, that actually can fight hate. So I also wish to let myself be happier and have joy in my life, and I hope and wish for joy in your life as well, and that we can fight the hate with that and look out for each other. Well, thank you, Andrea, for making your Substack and the videos. I really appreciate it. And I hope anyone who's interested, go check out her Substack and YouTube channel. And if you find that learning about collapse is overwhelming, check out the collapse support subreddit, or just give it a break for a while. There's not really much we can do about avoiding collapse, but I think it's very helpful to understand it and accept it, because then you let go of that cognitive dissonance, and you can live a life with more meaning and with hope in a true place. So I hope you have a great day.